Welcome to another episode of Thrive and Advance, where we help you make business growth predictable, profitable, and enjoyable. I'm your host, Dr. Shoureh Aftahi, and I'm thrilled to introduce our guest today. Nick Mariniello is the CEO, president, and founder of the Upstream Business Consulting. He is a picture of successful serial entrepreneur, having built several companies and sold them several companies, and now he helps other people create massive results. So Nick, welcome. I like to hand it over to you, and you tell me and our audience more about you and your background.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much for having me, Shoureh. It's an honor and a privilege. I appreciate it. It's always good to be able to speak to other people's audiences. As you know, getting the reach out into the community is so important. So yeah, I've been an entrepreneur for some time. There's no doubt about that. I started back, actually I didn't start as an entrepreneur. I started as a stockbroker back in the early 80s on Wall Street, and slowly went up the ranks to become the national sales manager at an independent brokerage firm. And after a period of time there and having some success, I decided to go off on my own, and I started my own brokerage firm, investment brokerage firm, with a couple of other partners. And, from there, we grew it. We grew it to, I had about 250 advisors around the country, primarily involved, in retail, consumer type of investments. And that did real well. We went through 9/11, we went through the dot-com bubble, and we decided to sell the brokerage firm to a private equity firm in New York City, and then started another business that was focused on delivering financial technology into trust banks. And that did well. I had about 50 banks, about $10 billion on the platform, sold that business in 2011 to LPL Financial. After that, started coaching and consulting other companies and other business owners. I didn't want to start another business. I had a couple of others in there also, but those were the two biggest that we had success with. And I didn't want to start another business. So been there, done that. So I figured, let me try to start working with other people and trying to help them grow their businesses.
So who are your clients? Who do you predominantly work with?
Yeah, and that's a good question. It's changed over the period of time. As you can imagine, initially, most of my clients were in financial services companies. So that was my background. I had 25 years in there. So I knew the lingo and had the contacts, the connections, and so forth. So I was doing some executive coaching in the financial services arena. And then after a period of time, I migrated away from the big corporate accounts to more of the small, mid-sized businesses, which frankly I enjoy more. I really do enjoy moving the needle. And when you're changing a small to mid-sized business, you're really having an impact on people's lives, as opposed to changing a couple of zeros on the bottom of a corporate on a corporate balance sheet. This was much more fulfilling for me. So most of my clients now are small to mid-sized business owners. I work with service professionals. I do work with financial advisors, but individuals more now than the corporates. I work with real estate agents, attorneys, accountants, people who have to get up in the morning and really make their money. So they need to act like a business owner, and they might not have been trained that way.
Most of us, particularly when we own our own desk, right? We have a desk and we're making money, not necessarily getting a paycheck, but we're creating, right? It's a small business, as your clients, the ones you talked about. We go around doing things and make a lot of mistakes, and we learn from them, hopefully. But at the end of the day, there are proven techniques that are very helpful, particularly in the area of money management, investment, creating wealth. What are some techniques, time-saving techniques that you could recommend to our audience?
Yeah, and it's a good point in that most small business owners or service professionals, they're always doing things, but they're not necessarily doing things based upon proven methods, okay, that might work as a business owner. So a lot of the work that I do with service professionals in particular, is to get them to think more like a business owner and not as an employee. And, those methods there include, things that are very simple to think about. I mean, and most people don't. The Pareto's principle, the 80-20 rule, where 80% of your success is going to come from only 20% of your activities. People struggle with that. Number one, the concept of it. But more importantly, they don't spend the time to really determine what are their highest value activities. Where are they spending their time most effectively, and what's bringing more to the bottom line. So it's not a secret by any stretch. But it's more of something where, it's out there. You have to really spend the time, money, and effort to determine, what's your most valued activities. Do more of them and less of the other things. It sounds simple, but they need guidance doing that. They need to spend the critical thinking time to actually determine, how should I be spending my day? How can I bring more to the bottom line? How can I create more personal free time for myself? Things of that nature. And it all comes down to the 80-20 rule, which is as simple as it comes.
Could you tell us about a time that you were dealing with a very challenging situation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Having to make the hard decision, sometimes we have to make hard decisions, and being persistent and basically changing that tune and creating success. Is there a specific challenge that you experienced, or maybe your clients have experienced, that you think it's pretty typical, but it's pretty devastating or could be devastating?
Yeah, actually, and it probably goes back to a point in my own career. In 1995, I mentioned earlier, I was the national sales manager at an independent brokerage firm, and the deal I created when I came on board was I took a low salary, and my income was really a function of the revenue that I can build above a certain threshold that the company determined. And I was doing really well. In fact, I kept quarter after quarter, and then year after year, I was going to the next levels, and my deal kept changing. It came to a point where, I was making a fair amount of money. And I remember even the president of the company coming back to me and said, "You're going to be making more than me now. We have to look at this." And that was a little bit of a trigger that went off in my head. And I said, well, I don't know why we have to change this. You would want your national sales manager to be the most highly compensated person. But it was a trigger in my life that I had to make a decision at that point, saying, okay, I'm creating wealth, but it's not creating wealth for me. So I left. And it was at a point where it was challenging at that time. I was 35 years old, I guess. I had a 2-year-old son. I had another one on the way. I just bought a home. I was making, probably about $250,000 a year in 1995 dollars, which was a good living. And, I walked away from it to start my own business, to basically take control. So that was challenging. And it had its moments, especially that first year, where you walk away from money coming in every month to money going out for the first several months. It was challenging. But it was a turning point in my life, frankly. You do determine, what you're made of, and, and you persevere and you make it happen. So yeah, that was challenging. I had a lot of downside, obviously, at that moment. I think my wife scratched her head a couple of times as to why are you doing this, but as a general statement, it was a turning point in my career. Yeah.
Probably the best thing you could ever do.
Absolutely. In hindsight, it was by far one of the smartest decisions I've made, but one of the most difficult.
And that is something most people deal with. They are working for a company, so you have security in your income, whatever that is, that paycheck that you're getting, the benefits that you're getting, and that fear of how can I let go of that security, but I'm so passionate to do something else. Mm-hmm. So what drove you to make that decision? And how can people benefit from your story to say, hey, I can take a leap?
What drove me to that decision? I think it was really, and for lack of a better term, I felt I was being cheated. And they weren't, the bottom line is I was working, doing my job and getting things to the next level on a regular basis. And really I had my own goals, my own plans in my mind. And if I would continue on the trajectory I was at, I was on at that moment, I would have hit all my goals. But, at that moment when the company decided, making too much money, we have to change your deal. That was an epiphany that said, yeah, right now, you have to do something different. You can suck it up, okay, and be an also-ran and live a good life. Don't get me wrong. I was living a good life, had a beautiful home and so forth. But it wasn't something that was fulfilling enough. And again, I was young enough at that time, especially to give it a shot. And I think it was a confidence factor. I had a fair amount of confidence in myself, and I had some success. And every once in a while, you have to take that leap of faith and trust yourself and go for it. And that's what most entrepreneurs do. And it's not an easy road to hoe, especially the first time in. But once you learn some of the processes and the principles that work in business, the risk gets mitigated, and you're able to to achieve results faster, and with more predictability than maybe the first time in trying it.
So tell me if it's safe for me to assume, or for us to assume, that it was mindset what allowed you to move forward. So
yeah, mindset's huge. In fact, when I'm coaching my clients, the first several sessions that I work with any client is really understanding them. Okay, I'm very big on clarity. My company's very big on focusing, getting people to truly understand, where they're at, where do they want to go, what are their obstacles, what are the resources, but most importantly, why do they want to get there? You have to have an emotional attachment to your goals, because especially as an entrepreneur, if you're going to be a small business owner, or if you're going to be an advisor, which in a company, or at a desk, or a realtor, or whatever it might be, you're a small business, and you have to have an emotional attachment to your goals, because it's going to require tenacity, perseverance. It's not something that you're going to wake up in the morning necessarily and have success. So the more vivid your goals are, the clarity that you have as far as where you want to be, 1, 3, 5, 7, 10 plus years down the road, and you can attach an emotion to that, it'll drive you to get there. So mindset's huge. It's absolutely huge. You have to have confidence in yourself, and the way you get confidence is through momentum. You have small wins, and you take those wins and you leverage them up further, and you build confidence. Doesn't necessarily happen overnight, but there is a methodology to building your confidence, but you have to have the mindset of taking that leap and attaching an emotional value to your goal.
And that's what helps you to get over the fear, right?
Absolutely. And again, there's always fear. Even at this point in my career, that you always have this little bit of, butterflies in your stomach when you're doing something new. But as you know, nothing grows in your comfort zone, right? You have to push yourself outside of that comfort zone a little bit. You don't take big risks. Okay. What you do is you take calculated risks and you push yourself. But there's always that little bit of apprehension, when you're going into something new.
Right. Since we're on the topic of what allows us to be successful, what are the critical skills that business owners need, or leaders need to have to create success?
Well, we just covered vision a little bit, right? I really do think that you have to have that. You have to spend the time to, and every once in a while I'll get a little crude. I tell people, don't bullshit yourself, okay? Get clearly focused on where you're at. Be honest with yourself and say, this is where I'm at. This is what my skills are. This is what my resources are. This is where I want to go. Now let's create a plan, okay, to get there. And the ability to create that vision and be honest with yourself on how you're going to get there is so key. I always like using the analogy of laying down your railroad tracks. I like railroad tracks because, they start at point A and they end up at point B. You can't make any turns, right? So, but every once in a while you might get knocked off your railroad track. but you get yourself back on it and it's still pointing towards your destination. So vision, obviously important, emotional attachment to your goals, having the perseverance, okay, to continue on. You know, they're all key. They're all key to, you know, to becoming successful. You know, there's obviously a lot more to it than that, but if you don't have that as an infrastructure, as a base to what you're doing, I don't even try to get into the next level of effectiveness training and other type of coaching things until we set that foundation.
Right, right. You know, we mentor people, right? Well, we all have had mentors. I recall one of my favorite mentors. At one point, she told me, I was much younger in my career. I was still in corporate America. And she said to me, Sheree, you scare them. They don't understand how you do what you do. That led to me thinking, or learning, actually took several years after that to truly grasp what she was telling me. But basically, you got to bring them along so they get what you do. And that has been a very important lesson I learned from a mentor. Do you have such experience from a mentor you can share that has affected you? Now you are using it to help others?
Sure.
And what is
Sure.
that?
So actually the one you just brought up, you know, Stephen Covey, right? First, seek to be understood, then to understand. So you're 100% right. And I think we've all kind of struggled with that possibly as mentors. Okay. We all, you know, we show up and we throw up, right? We start telling them all these things that they should do. And we truly do have to bring them along. And the way you do that is, you know, having them feel comfortable that you understand their situation. Okay. And that you can relate to it. So I can definitely relate to the story you just told. One of my mentors, you know, I was an athlete in college. I was on the rowing team in college. I was captain of the rowing team, and one of my coaches gave the famous triple B speech, and the triple B speech was brains, brawn, and pardon the expression, balls, and he talked about what you have to do to be successful in a crew race. And he broke down the race into 3 different parts. The first 500 meters of the race, you needed brains, okay? You had to think through the process, the strategy of the race. You had to set the boat properly. You had to get into, your cadence has to be right. So it was really more mental. And then the middle 1,000 meters was all brawn, right? That's why you spent all that time in the weight room and doing running and everything else. It was just muscle. It was working hard and driving through the race. And then the last 500 meters of the race, okay? When you're neck and neck with Harvard or Yale or whoever you're racing against, you know, it's all balls. Okay, it's who's gonna pull harder than everybody else, who's gonna suck it up and go for it. And I applied that to my life, I guess, but to business in particular. And, you know, so you know, the brains component of it is no doubt. You have to spend time, you know, planning. Okay, you have to spend time critical thinking about, you know, all aspects of your business. And people who fail to apply the brain part of it, okay, are really cheating themselves, okay, because they immediately go into the body of the race, the brawn, and they start doing things, right? And, you know, you might be working really, really hard, but if you don't have the right tracks, as I mentioned earlier, laid down, if you're not thinking through what you should be working on, all right, you're spinning your wheels quite a bit. You shouldn't be doing that. And lastly, you have to put yourself in that zone I mentioned before that, you know, it's not comfortable. You have to go for it. And, you know, it's not necessary. And I wouldn't equate it to taking risk as much as it would be to, you know, pushing yourself beyond your limits, pushing yourself beyond what you think you might be capable of doing. I mean, podcasting, right? I've done several of them now, but I haven't done many podcasts, and I was very uncomfortable. I'm still somewhat uncomfortable doing it, but you push yourself. You know, we all had to push ourselves the last few months, right, to go virtual. You know, I know I've been doing coaching virtually for a little bit of time, but you know, I know a number of colleagues who never coached, you know, like this using Zoom. You know, you have to come out of your comfort zone and you have to go for it. So the triple B speech, as crude as it was back in college, is something that you know, I do live with. I spend the time to plan. I work really hard in the middle, you know, and then every once in a while I go for it. And it kind of does resonate, frankly, in the business world.
Right. So let's talk about strategy. We talked about vision already. You have to have a vision to create a strategy, number one. Then create a strategy. What are the strategies that business owners, small business owners should create and apply every day, implement every day? What are those strategies that you focus, particularly for those that have smaller businesses?
Yeah. And people have misconceptions of what a strategic plan is from time to time. They think it's this big, very complicated, plan that they have to create. It's multiple pages and it's going to have all sorts of different things you have to focus on. And I do think that's especially in small businesses. Okay. If you have to understand that a good strategic plan will actually have you doing less, not more, because it goes back to the 80-20 rule we talked about earlier, that if you really spend the time and you create a strategic plan, you're working just on your most highly valued activities. All right. So the strategic plan is really one where you have to sit back first and determine what they are, and then how can I do more of them? And I can do more of them by doing less of the other things. So, creating a strategic plan is critical. Okay. Absolutely critical, but it doesn't have to be complicated, and in fact, I do a one-page strategic plan with my clients, and that's really focused on having a 3-year vision. And it goes back to what I talked about earlier, having a crystal clear vision as to where they want to be in 3 years. And then we talk about what do I have to do in the next 1 year that keep me on track to achieve my 3-year goals. Okay. My 3-year vision. What do I have to get done in 1 year? What are my goals? What are my metrics I have to hit? And then I break it down further and say, okay, on the next quadrant down the bottom here, what do I have to do over the next 90 days? What projects? What do I need to learn? Okay. Who do I need to contact? Who do I need to hire possibly? Who do I need to let go? What are the 90-day projects I need to do that's going to keep me on track for my 1-year goals that's consistent with my 3-year vision? And then in the last quadrant, I break up the page into 4 quadrants, is what are my 7-day activities that I have to do that's working towards my 90-day projects? Okay. So it's not a to-do list. Okay. We all have our to-do lists, answering emails, getting to clients, processing and servicing. It's not that. It's specifically what activities are consistent with the 90-day projects I've defined. So, and it might be just 1 or 2 things, okay, for that week that I have to get done. So strategic planning is key, but it doesn't have to be complicated. All right. And it all starts with, where do you want to be in that 3-year vision? And then you work backwards from there.
Right. So basically trying to get rid of the noise. When you get rid of the noise and you focus on the most important initiatives that would get you closer to your goals that are, again, attached 1 year, 3 year, 10 year, because if they're not aligned, then where are we going? So that's key.
Yeah.
And strategic planning and strategy is a buzzword these days that is overused, underutilized, or at least is not correctly utilized. So I find having to help people understand it's not that complicated, like you said.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Spend the time and think it through. And that's another thing I find a lot of small business owners don't do. They don't schedule critical thinking time. They're always working. Okay. They're always doing things. You have to, if you don't schedule it, you're not going to do it, because the day takes on a life of its own when you get into the office and so forth. So I actually require my clients to, schedule critical thinking time. Put a little CT in your 1 hour on Tuesdays at 2 o'clock. Okay, I'm going to spend the next 30 minutes critically thinking about my business. I'm not going to be, and it gets back to the proverbial working on your business, not working in your business all the time, right? You have to think about what you should be doing. Think like an entrepreneur. How do you get to the next level? But you have to schedule the time to do it, or you won't do it. I just know in my own life, you get caught up in the day, okay, and boom, the day's gone, and you didn't spend the time thinking about your business.
So if you're standing in front of a group of business owners of all sizes, small, medium, small business is what, between 1 to 500 employees, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're talking to these business owners or leaders, and everybody, we know that everybody deals with their fears every day. We touched about on it a little bit. Get over your fear. Your mentor example. Get over your fear and just apply yourself. What are the couple of things that you would recommend for them to do? Tactics that perhaps that they can apply that help them apply truly themselves to reach their full potential in what they're doing.
Okay. I'm going to answer that question by making a comment first of all. Tactics have to be a function of your strategy, not the other way around. What I find with so many small business owners is they're doing things and then they try to put a strategy, an umbrella over the things that they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
I tell everybody, look, your strategy has to come before your tactics. Otherwise, you're just doing things, right?
Right.
And then I try to get them to think about doing things as opposed to trying things. That's the other small business plight where they'll go on to the next shiny object and they'll be trying this and they'll be trying that. This sounds good. Let me try. I want to move people from trying things to doing things. And the way you do that is by having the strategy up front. So getting back to your question, what are the things we recommend to do that? It's really sitting back and determining specifically, again, going back to the one-page plan, what do we have to get done today? All right. And at the expense of what? You can't do everything, right? Anything is possible. Everything is not. You have to determine what you can do. So, I like people when they go through their day and they take a look at what did they do today? What did they do last week? And let's determine what was the highest value activities there and what were the lowest values. And let's decide how to get rid of those. So, setting your goals, okay, is important. All right. We can do a whole session on goal setting. The SMART acronym, right? The specific, measurable, align with your values, realistic, and time bound. But the key there is to be sure that your goals are achievable because you have the time and the resources to do it. And the only way you can get the time and resources to do it is during your critical thinking time I spoke about, eliminating or delegating what you should not be doing because it's going to allow you then to spend more time on what's important. So I use the rule of 2,000 with people, and you might even know that if you take your average income for the year and you divide it by 2,000, which is basically your working hours in the year, it gives you your hourly rate. So if I'm making $100,000, I divide it by 50 to keep the numbers easy. Excuse me, divide it by 2,000 rather. I'm making $50 an hour, and if I can delegate something for less than 50, specifically half of that, 25 would be great. That's a no-brainer. I should delegate it and focus on more of what I'm capable of doing at a higher level. So, from a tactic perspective, before I would tell people to do something specific to their business, I really get them to understand, what are they doing now effectively and what should they get rid of? What should they delegate or eliminate?
Right. So, I'm assuming, like the rest of us that help people and consult and work with leaders and business owners, you've come across those that have reached a point that nothing is working. It's very convoluted. If they have employees, the employees are not engaged, which is a terrible recipe for a company to create productivity. So have you had this experience to work with a business owner that they need to hit a reset button? And if they do, what are the things what are the alerts? What are the red flags that you look at, identify and help them understand we have to hit a reset button, or they'll become one of those statistics or part of those statistics that they're gone out of business in X number of years.
Yeah. And there's a number of red flags I guess you can look for with respect to, knowing, when it's time to hit a reset button. a toxic work environment where your people are basically coming in and they're drones, they're not excited about being there. You can see the, more sick days happening, and you can see people just not, at 5 o'clock, they're out the door. They're not going the extra mile and so forth. So, that's something that's pretty easy to observe. And you can say, okay, there's a reset button that needs to be pushed here. Obviously, from a sales perspective, that's the real easy one to determine whether you've leveled off or you're dropping in sales. Again, another red flag, reset button. So it does come down to making sure that when you do have your vision and your goals set up, that people truly are engaged and involved in that, especially if you're having employees that seem to be disengaged. And one of the things that I've used in my own businesses, as well as I teach to my clients, is to do mastermind sessions with your staff and put them in your shoes. Okay, allow them to basically see the dilemma or see the opportunity, and then let them chime in on how they would attack it. And it's interesting, the feedback you get there is some of your most creative people, okay, are your staff. And you have to give them the ability, okay, to feel like they completely are part of, the goal of where you're going, the mission of the company. So clearly you have to determine what that is. You have to communicate it properly, okay? You have to have a passion and a focus as to why this company is in business to begin with. What are you looking to do? What are the benefits to the clients that you're serving? And really, where do they fit into the equation? So, I have a saying, people don't buy into a vision unless you allow them to weigh into how to get there. Allow them to, to participate. Now, you're not going to necessarily agree with everything they say, but that's okay. The mere fact that you allowed them to participate and you heard them and you thought about their suggestions and so forth engages them in the process. And then they do truly understand, what's the mission? Okay, why should a client do business with our company? And it's important, again, and this only happens when you spend that time doing the critical thinking, okay? And that's one of the reasons why people fall into a situation where they have to hit the reset button. They have not spent that time thinking through the vision and then communicating the vision and then laying out the plans for everybody within the organization to actually achieve the vision. And that's what I love about coaching, because everything is learnable. Okay, there's nothing that I do, okay, or anything I've done in my past in my businesses that's not learnable. Okay, other people have been there, exactly there, and you should learn from them and then implement it. And the beauty about coaching is, yourself, people can get the benefit of 20, 30 years experience in a handful of sessions. It's something where you're accelerating, okay, their curve dramatically, only because you've been there, done that, and you know the proven processes. And once the business owner learns that, okay, learns the benefits, okay, of really learning from somebody else, they can then teach their staff, okay? This is the way, okay, we should do this going forward. And that's when you create that momentum within an organization, that everybody's feeding off of each other, and you're achieving success. So this is the greatest business in the world. I mean, this is so much fun. There's no doubt that you can change lives by changing their business, and it's exciting every day. You wake up and you can have an impact.
Right. Really, it's changing their lens, the way they see the world. They see their business, relationships, and as such. Yes, it's quite rewarding. My last question. There is a psychology to wealth, creating wealth, right?
Mm-hmm.
Many of us are skilled. We do great work. We function well. So let's just consider those are in place, but we don't create wealth because we lack understanding of the rules of the game in wealth creation and management. That seems to be in the core of your knowledge and experience. So is there something you can share with us to help us better understand that?
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for asking that, actually. First and foremost, wealth is defined differently by different people, right? Wealth might be strictly monetary to some people, and their scorecard is basically their bank account or their account at Merrill Lynch, right? So that's wealth. If you talk to one of my sons, he'll have a different definition. Okay, it's the experiences, is the wealth of experiences he's going to have in life. Okay, and it's not necessarily the numbers that are in his bank account, and that's great. That's fine. Okay, so the definition of wealth is where I always start with people. What are you looking to achieve? What's a wealthy, successful life look like for you? And then we create the plan to get there. And the critical thinking component, I keep going back to that because my wife kids me. The one time she said to me, you just teach common sense, don't you? Yeah. Okay. And a lot of business, okay, is exactly that, but people have not been taught how to frame it up properly and to think it through properly. So first you have to define what wealth is. Okay. This is, how do I know if I'm successful? You have to know, right? You have to know what that target is. If you don't have the target, you're never going to hit it. And then you have to determine what are you willing to sacrifice to achieve that wealth, all right? Because there's a trade-off. There's only 24 hours in a day, and when somebody else figures out how to do more than that, I'll want to know. But what's the trade-off? So, I like to talk to people about balance in their life, okay, from 4 key areas of their life, their financial, their career, their relationships, and their health. Okay, sometimes we throw in spiritual depending on the client, but what's the definition of wealth? How are you going to get there, and what do you have to give up, so to speak? Because if you build wealth, okay, and it's singular, okay, at the expense of everything else, you're not necessarily going to be a happy camper, okay, when you get later in life, because you've given up too many other things. So there's no one answer to the question, I guess. And I'm sorry if I went around about on the tangent there a little bit on the question of what does it take to develop wealth. But, I'm not the wealthiest person in the world, okay, when it comes to financial wealth, but I consider myself one of the wealthiest people in the world with respect to overall. I live a great life. I have great kids. I have a great wife. I have a great family. Great. Things are good. Okay. Do I have as much money as some other people? No. Okay. But that's because I wasn't necessarily willing to go down just one path, okay, to achieve that definition of wealth. So yeah, it's really spending time getting to know yourself and getting to understand, what you're willing to do to achieve certain aspects of wealth. Simple.
I love your explanation at the beginning that wealth means different things to different people, because it is true. And unless you're connected to your values and what are those values that drive you in life, guide you in life, and what are you willing to give up to gain the other?
Mm-hmm.
And the confusion comes when we don't understand or are not clear about those values. Then sometimes I've interacted with people that they're unhappy with whatever they do because they're not clear as to, no, I don't really want that because I got to give this one up. So I'm okay with it.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
Life is a series of compromises. You can't have everything. Okay. So you have to just determine what's most important, and then you go for it. Okay. Then you get it.
Right. And if I'm not mistaken, you work with a group of business performance advisors or coaches in the New Jersey area. So if our audience need to get in touch with you, they'll have all your information. They'll be able to do that. And you have bandwidth beyond just one person, which is good to know for them. So
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Nick. Is there something that you believe would be added value for our audience to hear? Any questions that I haven't asked and you think the area should be touched?
Yeah, I guess one last thing I would leave people with them would be, don't be afraid to ask for help. People are inherently good and people inherently want to help you. So, it's very often people are shy or bashful or they don't want to ask somebody, a faster, better way of doing things. And the best way of advancing in life is learning from other people's mistakes. And, you can ask somebody who maybe was in your industry or just somebody else you trust, okay, you have a rapport with, bounce your idea off of them, ask for the help, because it will, number one, it'll save you a lot of time and effort, okay, and you'll get a third party, but it'll also give you that confidence, okay, that it wasn't just a lame brain idea that you came up with, that you actually vetted it with somebody who you value their opinion, and you'll have that much more confidence when you're telling somebody else about this idea. So, yeah, ask for help. Don't hesitate, whether it's a coach or it's a mentor or it's a parent, whoever it might be. Especially if you're a solopreneur, okay, or you're somebody out there who really does not have a board to go to, reach out and talk to people.
Thank you. Great advice. Thank you so much for being on the show. And maybe at another time, we'll have another session and talk about other things.
I look forward to it. Thank you, Shoray, very much.
Thank you, Nick.